Night, Chapter 3. Spring 1944. Splendid news from the Russian army. There could no longer be any doubt. Germany would be defeated, maybe in months or even weeks. The trees were in bloom. It was a year like so many others, with its spring, its weddings, and its births. The people were saying, "The Red Army is advancing. Hitler will not be able to hurt us, even if he wants to." Yes, we even doubted his ability to exterminate us. Exterminate an entire people? Kill an entire population that lives in so many countries? So many millions of people? How? And so people spent their time thinking about other things, but not with their own destiny. Even Moish the beetle had become silent. He was tired of talking. He would walk through the synagogue or through the streets, his body bent down, eyes looking down, avoiding people's eyes. In those days, it was still possible to buy emigration certificates to Palestine. I had asked my father to sell everything and to leave. "I am too old, my son," he answered. "Too old to start a new life, too old to start again in some distant land." Budapest radio announced that Hitler had seized power, yet we still were not worried. Of course we had heard of Hitler, but it meant nothing more to us than a change of government. The next day brought really uncomfortable news. German soldiers had entered Hungarian land with the government's approval. Finally, people began to actually worry. One of my friends, Chaim Berkowitz, returned from the capital for the holiday and told us, "The Jews of Budapest live fear and terror. Anti-Semitic actions happen every day in the streets, on the trains. Nazis attack Jewish stores, synagogues. The situation is becoming very serious." The news spread through Siget like a wildfire. Soon, that was all people talked about, but not for long. Good attitudes soon revived. The Germans will not come this far. They will stay in Budapest. But in less than 3 days, German army vehicles appeared on our streets. Chapter 4. Anguish. German soldiers. However, our first impression of the Germans still let us live without fear. The soldiers lived in people's homes, even in Jewish homes. Their attitude toward the Jews was distant but polite. They never demanded anything impossible, used no offensive words, and sometimes even smiled at the women. A German soldier who lived in Kahn's house across the street from us. We were told he was a nice man, calm, likable, and polite. 3 days after he moved in, he brought Mr. Kahn a box of chocolates. Good moods were again revived. "Well, what did we tell you? You wouldn't believe us. There they are, your Germans. What do you say now? Where is your famous cruelty?" The Germans were already in our town, Hitler already in power, and the Jews of Siget were still smiling. Chapter 5. The Jewish holidays were miraculous. My mother was busy in the kitchen. The synagogues were no longer open. People gathered together in private homes. We drank, we ate, we sang. The Bible commands us to celebrate during the 8 days of the holidays, but our hearts did not feel like celebrating. Something felt different. We wished the holiday would end so we wouldn't have to pretend anymore. On the 7th day of the holidays, it finally happened. The Germans arrested the leaders of the Jewish community. From that moment on, everything happened very quickly. The race toward death had begun. First rule: Jews were prohibited from leaving their residences for 3 days, under the penalty of death. Moish the beetle came running to our house. "I warned you," he shouted, and left without waiting for a response. The same day, the Hungarian police forced themselves into every Jewish home in town. From that time, a Jew was prohibited from owning gold, jewelry, or any valuables. Everything had to be given to the authorities under penalty of death. My father went down to the cellar and buried our money in the ground. As for my mother, she went on cooking and cleaning the house. Sometimes she would stop and look at us in silence. 3 days later, a new law. Every Jew had to wear the yellow star. Some important members of the community came to speak with my father, who had connections at the upper levels of the Hungarian police. They wanted to know what he thought of the situation. My father's view was that it was not all bad news, or perhaps he just did not want to discourage the others, to throw salt on their wounds. The yellow star? So what? It's not lethal. Poor father. Of what then did you die? But new laws were already being given. We no longer had the right to go to restaurants or cafes, to travel by train, to attend synagogue, to be on the streets after 6 o'clock in the evening. Then came the ghettos.